Hi, welcome to Flight Test. I'm TJ, and today we're going to do the setup on the Vortex 150. If you have a Spectrum and you have the little Spectrum satellite receiver, it's a very simple install because they already provide the cable right out the back. Now, if you're like me and you do most things Tyrannus, we're going to install the X4R into this, and you can either install it inside if you have an XSR, but the X4R is a little bit too big, so we're going to install it on the back. Now, in order to install this receiver, we have to pull the top plate off and switch out this cable with one of the other two. So if you have an XSR receiver, it's the cable with the two white ends. If you have a D4R or an X4R like we're using, you have to use the connector that has a servo end on it. If you have a Spectrum receiver, you can skip this step, click a link below, and go on to see the rest of the setup. So we're going to go ahead and get started by removing the top plate. Now, although the screws are a star pattern, a 2mm hex driver will work. So when you remove the top plate, you just want to remove the 8 screws that are facing straight on the top. Alright. So now once you have all 8 screws out of the top, it's as simple as pulling the top plate up, feeding the cable through the hole, and sliding it around. Now with the top plate removed, we want to remove the Spectrum cable. So we'll just grab it, work it out. If you have a pair of needle nose pliers or a pair of tweezers to help you with this step, it'll help a lot. And we don't have them set here, so we're just going to use our fingernails. So we'll pull this out, set it aside. And now, depending on which receiver you're using, depends on which cable you're going to use. Since we're using the X4R, we need the servo lead. So we're going to take this one, and you want to install it correctly so the power on this connector is towards the back of the 150. So it's as simple as just plugging in. Make sure it's secured. And now we can reassemble. So if you're using the XSR receiver, you can notice there's a little space in here to be able to install your receiver. Now for us, our receiver is a little bit too big to fit inside, so we're going to route it to the outside. Now, one other thing to note with this frame is there's a little hard to see, but there's little holes on the back corners here on both sides. And those holes are for your antennas to route through. So whether your receiver is on the inside or the outside, you can use those holes to help keep your antennas out of your props. So now we'll get to reinstalling the top plate. So I just want to take our servo lead and feed it through. Line up the top plate. Now on the back here you have a little notch, and that's where this plate on the back has a little lip that goes through. You want to make sure that's there. And other than that, it's as simple as reinstalling the screws. I always like to do one screw on one end and go to the very opposite corner and do the screw on that side to help hold it together and allow us to install the rest easily. Alright, now that we have our top plate installed, we can take our receiver, our X4R. Now on the back of mine, I've already got a piece of 3M double-sided tape on it. If you don't have this yet, you can go ahead and get it. What we're going to do is just remove the backing of this tape, take our servo cable. Now on this receiver, the SB is our serial bus, and it is on the bottom pins, and the white wire will be on the outside of this bottom pin here. So now we're going to take the servo cable, white wire to the outside, and just slide it on the pins on the bottom here. So before we stick this down, what I want to do is I want to route my antenna wires through those holes I showed you when we had the top plate off. Now, although we have the top plate installed again, it's as easy as just aiming them towards the hole and sliding through. So we can slide through this hole here, and it'll poke right through. And the same thing on the other side. I'll aim it towards the bottom corner and it'll slide right through. Nice and simple. So now you don't want to pull on these too hard. We're going to take our receiver, just route the antenna wires right underneath it, and we'll stick it down. Now for me, during our testing, using these antennas out like this hasn't been a problem yet. Now, you may want to use some heat shrink just to secure these, but you can also take them and push them back up into the body a little bit to where you're only having just the very tips out. And that'll allow them not to really move around, but as you're flying, your props are going to be pushing the air down for the thrust, and it's going to keep the antennas out of your props. Now the next part is going to be binding our radio to our receiver. You want to make sure you don't have any props on, which it comes with no props on, so if you've installed your props, remove them now. And you want to get the antenna out, and be sure to install the antenna onto your VTX. If you power this up without it, it has a good chance of burning out your video transmitter. So we're going to bind real quick. Now for our X4R, we'll push our bind button, plug in our battery, just reboot to make sure it's bound, and we are bound. So now that you have your props off and your antenna installed and your radio is bound to your receiver, we can plug it in and go through the setup. Alright, so we'll turn everything on here. One really good benefit to the Vortex system is the fact that all the setup and everything is done completely through the OSD. So you can tune your PID settings, you can tune your rates, change your channels, everything through the OSD. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through. So right now it's detecting the receiver, and it'll scroll through. So if you're using Spectrum or Free Sky, whatever, it's going to go through and it's going to see what mode that the receiver is installed in. So it detected us as using the S-Bus, and now it's saying to center all of our controls. It says you want to move your roll control left in the hold. So whether you're using mode 1 or mode 2 doesn't matter, just whichever stick controls it. Move to opposite direction. Move yaw control left and hold. Opposite direction. Move throttle down. Opposite direction. Move back to center. Move your pitch down and hold. Opposite direction. Left stick back and left. Back to neutral. Level quad and move right stick back and hold. So make sure your quad is completely level, nothing laying under it, and move your right stick back and hold. Back to neutral, and we are all done. So right now we should hear some tones to let us know. You gotta love it. It's always a good way to start your day. You can see all the OSD elements around the screen. Up here in the top corner, it shows horizon mode right now. If you flip your 5th channel, it'll go between angle mode and acro. Now that we're set up, we can install our props. So now your Vortex 150 will come with 2 sets of props. We just need one, and we'll take the ones that have the prop nuts already in the bag. So we'll set it up here with the back facing us. We'll get our bag of goodies out. And with the quad setting like this, the back right motor will spin clockwise. And the way you can tell on your props is one edge is higher than the others, but they also have a letter. So right here is the letter H. That letter H will spin into the wind. So when they spin, this is going clockwise. So we can just set it there. So we have clockwise on the back right, counterclockwise on the front right, counterclockwise on the back left, and clockwise on the front left. So the way I always think about it is the motors opposite of each other are going to spin the same direction. So clockwise, counterclockwise. Now that we know which ones go onto which motors, we can go ahead and install them. You want the letters facing up, slide your props down, put your prop nuts on. I always do it one at a time, make sure the prop nuts are tight without going crazy with it, because you will break a prop. And before you move on to the next prop, make sure this one's good to go. So when you're installing props, always do one motor at a time. That way if you put all 4 props on, if you kind of finger tighten your prop nuts, you may forget one, which isn't really a bad thing until you go to take off and your quad decides to do a little dance for you. When you're first starting out, they have the camera angled all the way down as low as it can go, which is great. If you're a more experienced pilot, or while you're flying, you're noticing that you're seeing the ground more so than the sky, there's 2 screws here on both sides It's as simple as just loosening these up. So you got one here and one here, and if you notice, there's a little track right with those screws. So you just loosen them up a little bit, angle your camera up, and then tighten these screws back down to hold that camera in place, and then that'll allow you to have more tilt while you're flying. All right guys, now that we have our props on, we're ready to fly. If you want to see our full review, the link is in the description. You see all kinds of flight videos and these guys having a lot of fun with it. If you have any tips for the Vortex or the Vortex 150, leave them in the comments below. Let us know about them. And don't forget to subscribe. And when you subscribe, click the little bell to be able to get notifications on our channel. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.